The first thing I like to ask is, I guess, how much writing do you do outside of songwriting? Is it just, are you strictly just with songwriting, or do you journal writing or stuff like that as well?
Yeah, I don't. I pretty much just songwrite. I don't really write in a journal or write articles or write short stories or I'll write if I have a dream.
Yeah.
I'll write it down. Maybe I don't really have a dream log per se, but primarily it's just for the function of documenting lyrics in a song.
Yeah. So these ideas that come to you then, when they strike, you're out and about, whatever, do those go into your phone, or, these things that you hear, stuff like that?
Yeah.
Where do they go?
Nowadays, well, sometimes I sit down and I act, many times I'll sit down just to write, songs. And usually I use a recording device like the iPhone or whatever. In the old days, it was a little Panasonic dictaphone.
Oh yeah.
Or a good old, pen and pad. But to really capture like the melody and not forget the melody, I always had to record them. So I think I actually found the old Panasonic with the little micro cassettes in it.
Yeah.
And it's still got some song ideas from like 1995 on it.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So do you go back? Yeah. How often do you go back? Do you have a lot of discarded ideas that you worked on and you think, there's not a home for it now, but maybe down the road? Do you have a lot of those discarded ideas somewhere and you go back to them?
I do have a lot of them, strewn about. And I do revisit them on occasion, but pretty rarely. Primarily, I'll sit down to write like, okay, I have to write a record. So I'll sit down and I'll write, a bunch of songs, either with myself or with a co-writer. And I'll have snippets from out on the road where I was driving, and this melody or this phrase came into my mind, and I'll record that. I think I woke up to a dream the other day and I just recorded, some lyrics that I found in the dream. I love that when that happens. That's kind of like a gift from the universe. It's like a freebie.
Yeah. Does that happen a lot? Because I do hear that quite often from songwriters that, you got the notepad next to the bed. But do those dream melodies happen often? You think, I got to write that down?
I'd say for me, it's only, 5% of the time I get those free melodies or free phrases from like the dream world. But when it's nice when they do happen though.
So is there a ritual then? I'm fascinated by the rituals, of writers in general, like time of day, place, things you have to have with you. Is there an ideal environment where you tend to get your best writing done?
Let's see. I think there's a few different ideal environments for me. One would be when I'm at the steering wheel or in the passenger seat, out on the road, when my mind can just free up, no radios playing, no music playing, just the sound of the tires hitting the pavement. And a few hours of that kind of puts you in this state, like an elevated state of consciousness. I think it's almost like half awake, half sleeping. And sometimes that's a really good time for me to create like ideas, like an idea for a song or a chorus or a line. It's tough to write a whole song that way. But my other sort of magical space would be up way north of Hamilton, New York, way up in the Adirondacks, where I live in the summer and visit there in the winter. And it's just a magical place with a lot of nature and water and beautiful clean air. I get up there and I'll sit in the cabin and just, around the coffee table with my cup of coffee, maybe a pen and pad, a little recording device, and maybe a little candle under my seat because, oh my God, I'm so overdue. I'm supposed to freaking write a record by now. That always helps.
Right.
That's a huge motivating force actually for me, is like, okay, man, it's time to write a record. It's been a few years now and you got to pay the mortgage and put the kids in school. So there's always that.
Okay, so I want to explore a couple of things here. One is the movement, because this is something I hear often from songwriters, the role of movement to the process. And I think there's two types of movement. There's the movement and literally when something else is transporting you, whether it's a car, bus, van, airplane, train. I hear that often. I interviewed James McMurtry a couple of years ago, and he talked a lot about that, but that's pretty common like that.
Yeah.
But what is it? So I want to talk about that first. What is it about that, do you think? Because now that we talk about upstate New York, I remember interviewing someone probably 10 years ago, and they mentioned how going over the covered bridges in New York and the sound of the tires going over the wood gave them kind of a rhythm, a melody. So is it the boredom factor, of where you're kind of, you're driving down the road, or are there things that you're hearing? Because I hear that often, but I'd love to explore that. What do you think that is?
Well, for me, it wouldn't be a boredom issue because I'm not bored actually when nothing's going on. I think it's just that it allows the mind to reflect on other things that have happened that day or that week or that year or 10 years ago. And it allows me to conjure up stuff from the past or imagine things in the future. I do some of my best thinking, I think, when I'm on the road. I'm not sure what it is. It's not a physical like rhythm thing for me personally. Although you can, you hit a certain patch of pavement and it does do that. Ba-boom, 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 boom, ba-boom, ba-boom.
Right.
Ba-boom. And that can be cool too. That's rare for me to actually catch that and remember it. But I don't know. For me, it's just an opening of the mind that allows, some call it the muse, or my sense of craft. I've been doing it 30 years.
Yeah.
To sort of do its thing, and hopefully I'll have a means of recording, whether it's a paper or a little microphone or something, because those ideas, they come. And as I said earlier, it's hard for me to finish a song while driving, but that's where a lot of the songs are born, you might say.
What about ideas that come to you? I mean, as you're driving and you see a billboard or you see something, does that happen often too?
Oh yeah, totally. Actually, there's a song of mine called Freedom of the Road, and the second verse is up ahead of trucks carrying a wide load, a prefab house cut in half. And that's just simply because I was sitting in the back seat of my friend's Cadillac. We had started the song in a diner, and then we said, we need to freshen up the mind. So we headed out on the highway in his Cadillac, and he's driving and I'm in the back with my Gibson. And we had a great chorus and a great first verse. And I'm like, what the hell's the second verse, man? That's always a hard one for me, is the second verse. And so, hey, I'm just making stuff up. I'm just stream of consciousness. Well, what's in front of me? Oh, up ahead of trucks carrying a wide load, And it actually became, I think, a beautiful line and a beautiful image in the song.
Okay, the next thing is, I hear this often too, walking, biking, where you're moving on your own, and where that is more of like the cadence. People talk about, songwriters have all these theories about the rhythm, the cadence, the limb movement, swimming, so many of those things. Does that happen to you often?
Well, funny you should mention it. On the record that I'm currently working, there's a track called Hold On. And it's all about this treehouse I built with my kid. And I had the idea. I sat in the treehouse after we finished it, and I got the gist of it. But I actually didn't have a chorus, which is odd for me. Usually the chorus comes early. But so being a pandemic, we did all kinds of things together, which was a beautiful thing. Like we cleaned the cabinets and we waxed the floors and we rode bikes a lot. We're on our dirt road up in the Adirondacks. And I was out riding with my son, and I don't know what it was. Maybe it's the pedaling. But it's a couple of miles down the road, I got this, hold on to what you got. Like, what's important? Hold on to what you got, to what it is, not what it's not. Like, not the bullshit, just the good stuff. And I was like, oh my God, that's the chorus. And I heard it. I was like, hold on to what you got, to what it is, not what it's not. And I was like, I didn't have a phone on me or anything to record it. So I just like hauled ass. And I kept singing it over and over and over. I even sang it to my neighbor because I didn't want to forget it. And so I just kept singing that and singing it until I got home and I grabbed a little dictaphone or something and got it in there so I wouldn't forget it. And then I added it to the tune. So yeah, bike riding brought that specific chorus out.
Now, did I hear you say you're going to the Adirondacks in the summer or the winter?
Well, we live there in the summer and then we visit in the winter.
Now, do you go up there with the intent to write? Is this the place where you go and you think, I'm going to go up there to write? Because I guess I feel like we all have our places where, you know, for whatever is the mojo is, you know, where whether it's confidence or superstition, whatever, and it could be like a favorite chair where you feel like there's a level of, so do you have places like that where you feel like maybe, yeah, go ahead and talk about that, I guess.
Yeah, well, I live there primarily in the summer. It's my full-time residence from June to September, and I try not to tour too much in the summer because I want to be there. But when I go up off season, it's usually because, okay, I got to write. And I wrote a couple records up there, several actually, where I would just go up. I think for me, it's about the magic of the place, but it's also about just the dead quiet. And, you know, in the winter up there where we are, you know, there's no one around. It's just me and like the coyotes, you know, it's like, no kids, no phones ringing, no cars going by, no boats going by. It's just snow and ice and wind and weather and me and my guitar. And that's a good time for me to really hunker down. And, you know, I tend not to write well on bright, sunny days, you know what I mean? Because I'm too distracted. Like, oh my God, look at how beautiful it is. I tend to do better on a rainy or a cold, snowy day where you're not supposed to be outside anyway.
Again, like it's so interesting to hear you say that, because there are some people that really thrive on, I mean, forget sunny days, who thrive on like the noise and the chaos around them.
Dig it. Yes. And that works too.
Yeah, it does.
I've actually tried putting 2 radios on at once on different stations to write. And that's been productive as well, where there's the other opposite thing where, you know, I'll have one channel here on a radio and another channel playing at the same time. Like maybe it's talk radio and some music, just to trigger that, to get the editor like off duty, to get the editor in my brain to go crazy and walk away so that other stuff can come in. You know, I've done that a few times.
So you're hearing 2 different stations.
Yes.
And so wait, so are they both music, or you said one's talk and one is
one
music,
could be talk radio? There could be 2 different, one could be country and classic rock on it, or it could be, you know, a talk and another talk, or whatever, just 2 different things going at once so that the brain is kind of like distracted and just write. And it kind of is a neat trick.
Where did you, that's fascinating. How did you possibly think of that? I find that's fascinating.
I'm trying to think. It might have been way back in the early days. John Gorka, I think it was, because I was a young up and coming folk guy, and he was like the veteran folk guy. And I think he might have given me that advice. Put 2 radios on at once and just write and see what happens.
So because see, to me, I cannot write. I need total silence. I mean, I can't write with music, TV. I can't read with anything. I wish I could, but I can't. So,
I'm the same way.
Yeah. So when those radios are going, are you using them to actually listen, or is it just kind of like the chaos, the white noise? Yeah. What is that?
Chaos. It's not white noise, but it's like a chaos, because I'm like you. If I can't even play the radio like at dinner because I can't really converse because I'm so attuned to music that, is that a minor 7? Oh, wow. That's like my brain always goes and picks apart what it's hearing. So I don't listen to music casually. I don't have background music like at dinner, unless it's like maybe classical or something. But even that, I'll start getting carried away with it. So I'm like you in that I certainly can't have the television. Like as a kid, I couldn't do homework with the TV on. That's what? Are you kidding me? I'm way too distractible. So, but when I get the 2 things on at once, you can't really grab onto either one. You know what I mean? Or you do for a second, but then and it creates this Doppler thing with my writing brain. And so, 2 things at once, it makes the editor get confused. You know what I mean? And I think that's good when I can turn the editor off, because I'll be writing, I'm like, oh, that sucks. I can't say that. You know, that editor is always like chopping stuff
Yeah.
before it ever even comes out. So I like to try to, you know, give the editor a little dose of something so he can take a nap once in a while.
That is, so are you using that when you're in a rut? Is that techniques like
Yeah,
you have
that
to?
would be a technique I would use if I was like having a hard time, like getting what you might call writer's block. Like, shit, I can't get this freaking middle eight, you know,
Right.
when you're stuck. Well, I'll try that, or I'll try taking a nap, and then fresh when you wake up, like you're not, you know, that second when you wake up, use that fresh mind. That's a trick too, to take a nap and wake up. Or take a walk, just change your whole attitude, or
Mhm.
jump in the lake if it's swimmable. That's always a big one.
See, it's we just talked about it's the role of the movement, right? It is.
Yeah,
It's
right.
that
Yeah.
it's the limbs and all that stuff. See? So
Move your ass and the mind will follow.
exactly right. Isn't that some, I don't know, I read that, said some a great philosophy, right? Move your ass and the mind will follow. Do you think is it important to write every day, or do you find that forcing it makes things derivative?
Well, I think it in the world, it probably is important to write every day. I don't do it. I sometimes wish I did. I'd probably have more material if I did. So, I mean, for me, it's not that important. It's not on my priority list to write every day. I'm more of a, I write for the function of making records,
Mhm.
because you know, I put and I like to, you know, have inspiration and have a message in the music and stuff. But for me, it's more about, okay, it's time to make a record, because this is, you know, this is my job. And so that's my little pressure. That's my the boss. My boss is that voice. It's like, okay, man, you can't just continue touring behind the same, you know, body. You got to put new stuff out, keep people interested, make people have a reason to, you know, pay $45 to come listen to you sing. So
Right.
that's the kind of mostly my motivator. And I can't, you know, I sometimes I wish I wrote every day, but I guess I just don't want to that much.
Hemingway famously said he couldn't write about Paris when he was in Paris. He couldn't write about places. Well, he's needed distance to write it, to write.
Mhm.
So can you, when it comes to whether it's a place or maybe an emotion, do you need distance from it to be able to write about it? Or is it more effective when you were in that emotion or maybe immediately after it?
I think I totally get that Hemingway thing, where, because after I leave a place and let it, the memories of it kind of uh, distill or just settle, or you get that nostalgia added to the mix of looking back at it. And, you know, you can still remember the smell of the coffee coming out of the cafe and the bread out of the bakery. But not being there, you can add that little pinch of nostalgia in some line that will make it a little more magical, as opposed to, okay, I'm in Paris and I'm here and I smell the bread and the coffee's great and the girls are good looking. And you know what I mean? I think for
Yeah.
me, maybe look, I like that Hemingway thing where he can't be in Paris when he writes about Paris. I can identify, because I tend to write about places after I've left them and they're, you know, they've sort of grown in my soul a little bit.
Is it the same with emotions? Do you, you know, is the intensity of an emotion a good place to write from, or do you need distance from that emotion to be able to write about it?
Let's see. I'm thinking of, you know, I'm wondering if like John Lennon was really actually so tired when he wrote, I'm so tired,
Right.
haven't slept a wink, although I'm so tired. Um, I think, I don't usually personally write when I'm writing it. Like if I'm super angry about something,
Mhm.
you know, and I don't write a big angry song. Or, so I tend to write them after the emotion, I guess. I've never thought of that.
Yeah. Um, so you mentioned, I think you referred to your process as a patchwork. How linear, I'm guessing it's not because you called it a patchwork, but is, because again, like I'll give you you're right, some songwriters very linear process, others tell me that the lyrics are like they literally write them on art paper, and there's
Dig it.
thought bubbles and there's lines and there's words everywhere, not linear at all. So where do you fall in that continuum as far as that process?
I fall somewhere in between what I call the John Lennon school of writing, which is like, no one, I think it's me, but I know, and it's a dream. Like what the hell does that mean? Like where you just
Right.
make stuff up into the microphone. I love that. And then I'll also be more of the, okay, pen and paper, proper English, so that people know what I'm actually trying to say. Somewhere in the middle. I hope most of my songs have some of that John Lennon school, where it's stream of consciousness, kind of artsy. You say what it means, and then the more Hemingway, literal. Okay, well written, well, easy to know what I'm saying, but yet poetic. I don't know.
When you edit,
it's funny. It's funny. It's hard for me to talk about writing. It's like Frank Zappa said. It's like writing about, what did he say? It's talking about music is like dancing about architecture.
something like that. Right.
Yeah.
Well, you did mention an editor though. So when you edit those lyrics, are you editing? What is that process like? Are you putting different are you taking words out? Like, what is that editing process, revising process like?
Yeah, I do revision for sure. And I think it's effective, because I'll have lines and I'm like, well, that's kind of artsy. It's kind of cool, but nobody's going to know what I'm talking about. So I'll try to put a little more universal phrase in there that makes a little more sense, but at the same time, not completely chopping block the artsy, like dreamy, lyrics. I always want to keep those in there and let people make up their own mind. Because I think it's very important to evoke imagery as opposed to just present it. Like, I really think it's important in all art to evoke and not to just give it to you. Like, there's a beautiful green tree with birch bark and 3 bluebirds in it. Like,
right.
To evoke that imagery, I think is it, because it involves the listener. And so they're even more invested and feel a part of it.
It's like poetry, right? I mean, poetry is it's about a unique way to look at something, that you may have seen 1,000 times before, right? That's what a good poem does, at least to me, is, it can be about an everyday thing, but it's in a way that you've never thought about it before. So
dig it. Like Picasso, Picasso.
Yeah.
You look at his stuff, it's like, I think it's that, but wow, it makes me feel this way. And I see this, and, as opposed to like a Monet, what it is. And it's, kind of squint your eyes and it looks cool. But yeah, so I like a little Picasso, little Monet, little Hemingway, little Lennon, little Dylan, little John Hyatt.